This is episode number 38 of the Expert Table Tennis Podcast. My name is Ben Larcombe and my guest on the show today is Colin Wilson. Now, Colin covers all bases when it comes to table tennis. As a player, he represented England and actually won 2 medals at the Commonwealth Games. He's since then transitioned to coaching, and he's coached the England table tennis team at all levels and a number of really high-level table tennis players in England. Alongside that, Colin works in the business world, really focusing on improving performance in a number of top executives and people that work at big companies. And he's worked with a number of other coaches in other sports as well. So really everything to do with improving performance and creating a really good climate where people can succeed. That's kind of Colin's expertise. And then recently he's gone and opened Corby Smash Table Tennis Club in the UK, a full-time table tennis club that's open 24/7. And yeah, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about loads of the things that he's learned from his experience. And I'm really excited to talk to Colin because I know he's just going to be able to help so many different people. If you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're starting a club, he's got so much information that's going to help people. So let's get straight into the interview with Colin Wilson. Joining me on the show today is Colin Wilson. Hi, Colin.
Good morning, Ben. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, sat in the Corby Smash Table Tennis Centre and looking forward to a day's holiday coaching.
Yeah, it's quite early in the morning. I haven't been up for too long. And you've got a few kind of things going on today at your new club. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about Corby Smash and what your day is going to look like.
Okay, that's great. So we decided, I say we, myself and Tony West, decided that we were going to set up our own commercial table tennis centre. And we decided that Corby was the place to do it. It's a town that's got lower rents than in around London, where I've been a lot of my career. And we found that there was grass and space and estate agent signs with industrial premises. And so we've got a 10-year lease on a industrial premises, and we've spent 6 figures in converting it to a specialist table tennis centre. All of the facilities, you could play an Olympic final here, such are the conditions. And it's taken us about 2 years to get to where we are now. The first 18 months of that is just getting it and going through the process of getting planning permission and leases and everything. All takes more time and trouble than you ever expect. But we finally opened on February the 8th, so it makes it our 6-month birthday. And today I've just got one young man coming in. He's about 12 years old. Coming in at 10 o'clock, and we're going to do some private coaching with him. And we're open every day of the holidays all the way through August. So it's just kind of a place that's open all day, every day, with up to 12 tables, brand new equipment, and we're running camps every day for whoever wants to come.
Brilliant. And this is a hugely exciting venture for table tennis in the UK because there aren't that many of these kind of clubs around. You know, the majority of table tennis clubs in the UK are sharing halls with other sports or kind of based in schools. So kind of what led you to really want to open up one of these big full-time places in the UK, Colin?
Well, I'd always wanted my own club. I'd coach. I'd played and then coached, you know, professionally and voluntarily in many different places, and I just thought I'd like to have a place where I can run things my way and see the same people over and over again and see if we can really make a difference. So I wanted to get my own club, but so many clubs are dependent upon public funding, charitable donations, school timetables, and I've seen so many clubs come to an end or get increasingly restricted because they're not masters of their own destiny as a facility. So I decided that if I ever was going to do this, I would have a centre where the tables are nailed to the floor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So no other activity or sport or political agency can take table tennis away. I mean, one of the fantastic things about table tennis, one of its greatest strengths, is that it's easy to put up. You can put up table tennis anywhere on your own kitchen table at home, or in a leisure centre. You can easily put up a table just about anywhere in the workplace, and that's fantastic. But as my great friend and mentor at the Sports Council said to me, 20 odd years ago now, the downside of table tennis is that it's very, very easy to take away. And we've all had that experience where they decide to put table tennis into a leisure centre somewhere, and then when the badmintons kind of book the hall, then they say, you can play table tennis up on the balcony or in a separate room, and then it gets moved around and the table gets damaged, the net's hanging off, and there's not proper lighting, and then lo and behold, people say, I'm sorry, we don't do table tennis anymore, there's no demand for it. Well, of course there's no demand for it if it's been marginalised to that extent. So I was determined that table tennis was going to be the number one activity at whatever club that I had, and so I rented a place where they're nailed to the floor for the next 10 years.
Amazing. And I hadn't actually thought of that before, because I guess if you build a tennis club and you put in all of these tennis courts, they're there, aren't they? They're not getting moved or turned into badminton courts. But yeah, you're right. Table tennis, it's so easy just to put up a table in the corner of a sports hall and then kind of just put it away in a cupboard and never get it out again. And I think that is what we've seen. Lots of clubs in the UK popping up, looking promising for a few years, and then for whatever reason just kind of dwindling away. And it sounds like what you're trying to do is build a really kind of long-lasting club that's going to be able to support itself and therefore kind of go on indefinitely.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, clearly we've got a 10-year lease, but if everything's working for everybody, then we can have it indefinitely. So it should be very, very much a permanent facility, not just for 10 years. Although obviously we can achieve a lot in 10 years. We've got visions for 50. But that's right. I think, and it's one of the reasons that table tennis is less respected, because it's so easy to get rid of, it's so easy to marginalise, it's so easy to degrade the equipment, and we're not going to do that here. If in a town, I mean, Corby is very lucky; it has a 50-metre Olympic swimming pool. Which is fantastic. Of course, if that's not making money, then there's a huge draw from the local authority to want to support it, because once they've built it, it's a bit obvious if it's not being used much. Not the same with table tennis, and so table tennis typically has been a victim of reduced funding and of less commitment to some of the sports where the facilities are much more significant and much more obvious, like you say, a swimming pool or a tennis club. Yeah,
of course. Okay, well, I've realised that we haven't kind of covered who you are, Colin, and I know that lots of the listeners outside of the UK will be kind of left in the dark at the moment. So I wonder if you could give us just kind of a couple of minutes summary as to your table tennis career, and then a little bit about your professional career as well, because I know that's quite interesting and linked.
Okay. Well, I first picked up a bat at the age of 9. My dad was pretty sporty, liked table tennis, good enough to play sort of first division of local league. And I had an elder brother, Steve, who's 5 years older than I am. And they were going to a table tennis club once or twice a week for a couple of hours. And I wasn't allowed to go because I wasn't tall enough. I couldn't see over the table yet. And I said, "Can I come?" And they said, "Well, when you're old enough, or rather when you're tall enough, then you can come." And eventually my chest would be over the top of the table surface, and I said, "Come on, I'm big enough now." And they eventually took me along, and I really loved it from day one. It's a sport that I really got into at an early age, and so at the age of 9 I started. I was playing for my county for the next year. I was getting to the finals of national under-11s within sort of a year, within 18 months. And then I was England number 1, under 13, under 14, under 17, alongside such great as Graham Sandley, who was in fact better than I was, but he was a great practice partner and a great person to chase. And then sometimes I'd win and sometimes I'd get the ranking. So that was very interesting. I played in 5 consecutive European Youth Championships, culminating with a bronze in the boys' doubles with Graham and finishing 5th in the team event, losing out to Russia for a medal, 5-3, which was a close match. And then I played in the Commonwealth Championships long time ago now, but I won 2 silver medals under the tutelage of Donald Parker, who was our national coach at that time, and those medals were so I got a silver in men's doubles with Jimmy Walker, who was a great doubles partner for me, and also in the men's team event where I beat the Australian champion in the semi-final to get us a place in the final. After that, I did 2 things. Went to university and also realised that I was going to have to change my game to be more successful at senior level. I had a good game, very, very good game to beat juniors, but not so much to beat seniors. So I had to kind of strip my game, and that's where I got involved with Peter Hurst, who was absolutely fantastic for me in terms of his knowledge technically and philosophically about how table tennis actually works. And as a result of rebuilding my game around what I learned with Peter and also with Dave Fairholme, and with some people outside of table tennis as well, I learnt a great deal about where performance comes from. And that's kind of the question that I wake up with every morning. And by the age of 19, I was involved in the training of coaches in table tennis. And then after that, I was asked to join Sports Coach UK and run the Southern region. So that was about coach development for sports coaches across all sports. And then I became the head of high performance coaching at Sports Coach UK. So I was working with UK Sports Institute, what's now UK Sports Elite Programme. And it was all about making coaches better coaches. And my responsibility was to run full day workshops for Olympic standard coaches from different sports, getting them all together, talking about common issues. And I would have the great privilege of speaking to professors and practitioners from all over the world who were renowned to be the very, very best at what they did in their specialisms, and translate that for the use of the coaches in different sports. And that's where I also learnt to do quite a lot of what has now become executive coaching, which was about helping coaches who are already just about the best in the world, Olympic medal winning coaches, and helping them shape how they were going to be better over the next 5 years than they were already, when there was no template for what better was, because they were already better than anyone had ever been. So that was a fantastic environment for me to learn in. And then there was a small jump from there to be doing leadership development work, executive coaching, and supervision of executive coaches and organization consultants in business. So now half my time is spent in sport, and half my time is spent in business. In business, I work with some of the large corporates, some of the biggest IT companies and banks in the world, do my best for those. And in sport, recently fulfilled a contract for Sports Coach UK, looking after about 18 national junior coaches in about 18 different Olympic sports. So I'm really, really lucky to have been absorbed in that environment for the last 30 years. And now I just want to sort of put it back on the ground with young and old table tennis players locally to where I live.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you're kind of the perfect guest, because you're ticking so many different boxes. I know kind of the people that listen to this show, some of them are quite high level players, and you've got that kind of experience. Lots of them are kind of beginners, and the stuff you're doing with the new club, kind of you're doing a lot of work kind of trying to really boost performance in the beginners. We also have loads of coaches that are listening, so I'm keen to pick your brains on kind of advice for helping coaches to improve. But I guess kind of the whole umbrella thing you're doing is just trying to find ways to improve people's performance. Is that kind of how you see yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. To improve people's performance. Sometimes that improvement might be incremental, so we're just using the marginal gains and things. Kaizen and all of that to make continuous, regular, linear improvements to people's performance in ways that they weren't able to reach on their own. And sometimes it's transformational, where we go in a completely new direction and they actually become kind of a new person. It shifts personality, and it shifts mindsets, and it shifts emotional states, and it shifts beliefs, and people can become quite different in terms of their performance. So that's when we, instead of just going upwards from A to B, we're going sideways from A to C and up a different ladder faster.
Okay, well, one of the things that I'd like to talk about with your kind of experience in sport and business is the idea that kind of success can transfer, or kind of the the ability of getting good at something is kind of a skill in itself. And I'm wondering if you've seen that in your work, if you've seen kind of certain underlying qualities that kind of underpin the kind of people that reach the top in different fields, and if so, kind of what those things are.
Okay. Well, I regard myself not as an expert, but as a student, and a lifelong student of this. And I think the minute we think we are experts ourselves, that's when our own learning starts to decrease. So I like to kind of try and keep fresh and young about the fact that I'm just scratching the surface of all this stuff. So, and I think I see. So it's more about in the old motivational literature around the difference between sort of ego mindset and mastery mindset. I think people who become very successful at what they do tend to have a mastery mindset rather than an ego mindset. And these days you've got obviously the work of Carol Dweck and others talking about growth mindset rather than fixed mindset, and that's a similar kind of concept. And if you look at the people who are simply trying to maximize their learning rather than be number one, those are the people who normally end up being number one in my experience, because you get limited by comparing yourself with others, and you get less limited by trying to be better today than you were yesterday. And sometimes you can end up being a lot better than the competition, not by trying to beat the competition, but by trying to make the best of yourself. And so there's a strong emphasis that we use here about being the best that you can be and looking for ways to accelerate the rate of development. And that's what we're really about. So we regard deliberate practice as an interesting concept, but what we're working with here is forensic practice. What is the perfect practice we can do right now at this time, in this moment, in this situation, to maximize the rate of improvement and to make those continuous breakthroughs and transformations that can increase performance? And I find that people in business are successful to the extent that they are students rather than pushing the idea or promoting the idea that they are experts and gurus. I find that most of those people top out their learning sooner.
Yeah, and I guess we see this in all table tennis players as well. If you go down to any local club, you can quite quickly pick out the players that kind of think they know what they're doing and aren't taking advice from other people. And then there's the other players that are very much watching kind of better players, constantly asking people for advice. And they're the ones that, you know, month after month are kind of getting better. And the other ones are very much just stuck at their level, not improving so much.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I've seen a lot. And so what we try to do here at Corby Smash is for everybody to be a learner. No matter who they are. So we do what's called cascade coaching. So through the club, we don't just have one person coaching. We've got a team of 5 people who coach here. But the idea is, as soon as someone's learnt something from one of the coaches or just got some insight, then they coach the others. And we're not precious about having exactly the right information. Conveyed. But what we find is that with a cascade coaching model, that everybody regards themselves as learners, everybody regards themselves as responsible for helping everybody else, and as a result of that, the overall improvement increases. It is less than forensic sometimes at the bottom end, as people who we teach then teach others. So quite often the intermediate and improver players will be practice partners with the starter players, and if we're not overlooking it, they will give them some tips and some guidance. But overall, that method creates a stronger team ethos, a greater aggregate of learning, and then obviously the 5 coaches are there to make sure that we then retranslate what the youngsters have learned back into forensic practice, so that they can pick up exactly what they need to improve faster. But overall, if everyone in the coach is a club and they're working to the same philosophy, that's got to be better than just one person who's supposed to know what they're talking about, telling everybody else what to do, and everyone else just being passive recipients of that knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like you're giving players a bit of responsibility to kind of go and seek out their own tips and information from others. And then they've also got the added responsibility of, once you've learned something, kind of pass it on to younger players or newer players as well. So, and I think, you know, you hear a lot that if you're able to teach something, then you've learned it to a greater level than if you've just kind of received it yourself. So I think I've certainly seen a lot of players, and I've seen this myself, where once you start coaching something, you start to actually improve your ability to perform that skill yourself as a player, because you just start to kind of, your mind is open to kind of new ideas and new little variables about it.
Yeah, I think that's right, Ben. Becoming a coach, I don't think made me a worse player. There's, people talk about that, and it's absolutely right that you have to be very, very single-minded to the point of selfishness if you're going to be excellent at something in a narrow field, and that's fine. But I think it's when you try to teach something that you first really start to understand it, because you hear yourself articulating what it is that you're doing. And you kind of check yourself, say, well, does that actually make sense? And does that make sense in all circumstances? And is there a hole in this argument that I'm kind of portraying? So it creates improved evolution of thought. I do think for top players, I wouldn't encourage them to become full-time or part-time coaches themselves. But I think for coaches to help players to understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what's happening around them, to expand their awareness and expand their horizons, can then help those top players to find a new range of resources to make them better players again.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I wonder if we can do a few kind of specific questions for people who are listening, who are kind of beginner, intermediate table tennis players wanting to improve. I know you've got a lot of experience in this. So first question would be kind of, can you practice too much? Is there a certain amount that people should be trying to practice? Can you practice too little? Kind of what's ideal? You've got a club that's open every day of the week. So, should players train 2 to 3 hours, 7 days a week when they're just starting out if they really want to improve, or are they better to kind of break it up a bit? What are your thoughts, Colin?
Fantastic. Okay. Well, first of all, no one knows the answer to this question. And second, there isn't a single answer, because every individual is different. My general belief is that one clear day off from table time a week is good, and I recommend Sundays as far as possible. And I think in terms of how much to play, what we've seen is players that come in pretty much every day and practice, and even at beginner and improver level, because of the facilities that we've got and the kind of personnel that we have floating around, sometimes they're coming in for an hour a day, sometimes they're coming in for 4 hours, 5 hours a day, and these are not professional players. These are people that have only been playing for 3 or 4 months but are keen to improve. I think it's really, really important that you get a quarterly screening for injuries, potential injuries, muscle imbalance, and potential burnout. Those are the things that I would particularly guard against, and that's what we kind of prescribe here, that we work on both sides of the body, not just the playing hand side of the body. But having said that, if you can keep on top of physical and mental health, then I think you can be playing probably 2 to 4 hours a day from an early start, and the results that we've seen with some people doing that here have been remarkable. I mean, a player with no particular gifts, won't give any names away, but has just got into enjoying themselves and putting the hours in. Took a game off Kettering League number 24, Kettering Premier League player, and after 4 months they took a game off them in a league match, which was just fantastic. The fact that they could read the serves, the fact that they could counter loop a loop. It was really fun to see how people can improve if you kind of put them in the right goldfish bowl.
Yeah, and that kind of improvement isn't going to come from playing 2 hours a week on a Thursday night kind of for a few months. Kind of, if you're playing every day, the rate of improvement is obviously just going to be so much faster. So I guess, yeah, if you're able to do that and keep enjoying the sport and stay fit and injury free, then yeah, definitely playing lots is gonna is going to help. Now, I wonder about competitions as well, because I get asked kind of a lot about
say
competitions.
One thing about that, Ben, actually. I don't want to give the impression that you have to play that much, actually. We've got another that's just a couple of outlier examples. But we have other players that play perhaps an hour twice a week. And at an early stage, that's fine. They're involved in other sports. They've got their schoolwork to do. Some are 50 plus years old. And they're improving rapidly as well, because we've worked out what to do in those couple of hours. Clearly, 2 hours a week is not enough to become a top player. That's clear. But you could get to reasonable local league standard and have a very, very enjoyable table tennis career on 2 hours a week. It's just a case of what you do in those 2 hours to actually generate the improvement, the understanding of the game, and the ability to play against different styles. So that those 2 hours are effective. So just to kind of put that marker down is that we're not elitist here about battering in thousands of hours for everybody. Most people don't even want to do that, but they can play a relatively little amount and improve and have an enjoyable time and career playing table tennis. But sure, if you want to get into the top sort of 100 in your country, then you've got to be putting a few more hours in than that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the quality there as well. It's no good just doing a few forehands, backhands, and then playing matches. If you want to improve, kind of, you've got to be working on the specific stuff and actually getting some advice from people who kind of know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and quite often I see a lot of people who out there who practice in certain ways, and they're getting better at what they're practicing, but what they're practicing is not relevant to a match. So actually, they're getting relatively worse all the time, because the type of practice that they're doing is relatively wasted. And I see that a lot with kids on competitive circuits, and the parents spending thousands of pounds a year, and they're just not on a path. They're not on the path they think they are, which is an inevitable expensive failure that's going to come to roost in a few years' time. And so we try to shortcut that where we can. And those people that want to come here, we try to get people on the right path, and then they don't necessarily stay here all the time, but they go off to their own training environments with their own plan, and hopefully get on a path that's a potential elite, putting in the foundation for future elite play.
Sure. Okay. What about competitions for players? So is it a good idea just to start entering competitions as soon as possible and get some experience, or do you kind of think that maybe it's better to wait a bit and get some fundamentals? I guess it's a similar question to some coaches really focus on the technique at the start and want that to be really right, and others think they're better off kind of learning more naturally. What are your thoughts? What are the kind of things that you're doing at Corby with the players there?
Okay. What we try to do in those first 20 or 30 hours is to ensure that we've got stroke production and recovery positions. We move from consistency of stroke production very quickly to irregular footwork rather than regular footwork. And we do encourage very, very short durations of games, because table tennis is about having a score and playing up to 11 or whatever, and having a game and having a winner and a loser. So we do about twice a week encourage people to have some kind of competition, no matter what their standard, but that is overridden by the quality of the technical work that we put in the early days. So they've got an idea that in the end, this is not about marks for artistic impression. It's about marks for points on the table, and that's binary. You win a point, you lose a point, and that accumulates until someone's won the match. So in the end, you don't get points for looking good. You don't get 3 points if you hit a screamer down the line from around the net. You only get 1 point for those things. So in the end, it's about being pragmatic and about being effective. But having said that, having an efficient technique, and I go back to one of the players that was playing in my era, Jan-Ove Voldner. If you look at the efficiency of his play, it meant that he had more time than other players to play, and he could concentrate on what the other player was doing in anticipation, rather than spending a lot of time playing shots and being out of his own recovery position. and
Definitely.
we follow that kind of model in the early times, and then we build power against that. So in the end, cool head, soft hands, and then use those two things to create power. A little bit like some of the martial arts or Aikido, where it's not about the grunt that gives you the power, because quite often that leads to tension. That also leads to stress, mental stress. But we're looking for relaxed power through quality technique and recovery.
Yeah, and I know that's something that a lot of new players really struggle with. And kind of when I was doing the expert in a year thing with Sam a couple of years ago, it took him a long time to work out that, because he came kind of from a rowing background where it was very much like grit your teeth and kind of go mad to kind of make sure that you win, and getting the hang of being so fast and so powerful, but at the same time kind of being so loose and relaxed is something that I know a lot of people just can't quite get their head around. Have you got any tips for helping players to kind of to develop that? Because you see so many new players just looking so stiff and rigid and kind of getting really tired because their muscles are so tense and they're kind of putting so much effort into everything. Kind of how can players get into that kind of loose, relaxed zone, even when they're playing matches and it's kind of high stress?
Okay. At a late stage, you should be well organized with proper table tennis psychology for how you prepare for competitions, how you operate yourself in between points, how you strategize about the game. At an early stage, I think this is where coaching is critical, because it's more about in addition to the technical work and the philosophical work, this is more about getting the mental setup right at an early stage. Early over competition in stressful environments, playing for ranking points, I think is generally disastrous for the majority of players, because it inhibits their technique and actually makes them worse technically as they're improving as match players. So you've got kind of the seeds of future difficulty written into the current effort and the current improvement, which is a shame. I would say you have a parent who is indifferent to the result that you get, and I think what gets in the way is the numbers. With young players, if there's a score on the board, they play differently depending on what the score is on the board. If they've got a ranking, they look up the other person's ranking and they play differently depending on whether the other person's above them or below them. And how many people have you heard, Ben, say, "Oh, I play really well when I play against people higher than me or better than me, and I find it harder when I'm playing people not as good as me." Well, there's a couple of things in there. One's mental, about anxiety and fear, and we need to get that. We need to get that out of the way when we're learning technique and mental control. And secondly, of course, we play better against better players because we get a more consistent ball. So we learn at an early stage here to be able to win consistently against people who are not as good as you. So it's good to play people who are not as good, and it's important to be able to play people who are not as good, rather than just lament the fact that you're not playing with someone better than you and therefore improving. The ability to beat someone that's not as good as you time and time and time again is critical. And I learned that from playing British League with Desmond Douglas, time and time ago. He was the best player. He never complained that he wasn't getting practice partners better than him. But he was 5 in the world. He won 10 out of 11, I think, English national championships, and he was a complete professional and gentleman. I learnt so much from playing with and competing against Des.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And I think that's really useful advice for people. I do see so many players kind of complaining about either not being able to beat weaker players, or like wishing they could play like they do against the better players, or in practice kind of complaining that they're not getting good enough practice from weaker players. But it's almost like a different skill, isn't it? Beating weaker players than it is beating stronger players. It's a kind of different game, a different mentality that you need to bring to it, and that's something that you need to develop, and you're going to develop that in the practice hall. Absolutely.
And knowing how to practice with people who are not as good as you is vital as well. On average, you're going to spend half the time playing with people better than you and half the time playing with people who are worse than you, unless you're just paying better players. So half the time you're going to be playing against people worse than you. If you have an inbuilt prejudice against your belief about the quality of that practice, then you're not going to be doing deliberate practice, never mind forensic practice. And so having some humility and some respect for the people that you're with and thinking through, okay, I've got this player at the other end, and maybe you just do 15 minutes together, 7.5 minutes each, ask them what they want to do for 7.5 minutes, and you just serve them as best you can without compromising your own technique. And if it's a little bit slower than you normally would, what a fantastic opportunity to absolutely improve the movement. It's a little bit like slow motion martial arts style, where you just start to get the movement even more perfected. That's an important part of improvement. And when it's your turn, okay, how can I use this player to help me? So even though they're not as good as me, well, if I play to their forehand and they play anywhere, then that's one example of where I can do some really good fourth ball practice against someone that's not as good as me. They know the ball's coming to their forehand, and they can just enjoy swinging against me, and I can practice my fourth ball against them. So the ability to construct practices against people who are not as good as you is absolutely critical, and the mindset for playing people who are not as good as you, where it becomes about humility and respect rather than about fear, is where I think the seeds of future success come from.
Definitely. Great advice. Cheers, Colin. Corby Smash, tell people how they can find out more about that, and if they're based in the UK, are they able to kind of come along and check it out and have a bit of training?
Yeah, well, people come not just from the UK, but from all over. But we're still small and growing and trying to get our name out there. So thank you for the plug. Our website is www.Corby Smash TTC for Table Tennis Centre. So corbysmashttc.co.uk. Our phone number is +44 if you're outside the UK. And then it's in the UK, it's 01536 206 375. So 01536 206 375. And you can follow us on Twitter at Corby Smash TTC or at facebook.com/ surprise, surprise, Corby Smash TTC. So please get in touch. Ask us any questions that you might have. We'd love to see you. We've made this place for the table tennis community to find something new and a little bit different, and we hope a little bit special. And it's only by using the place that we'll still be around and trying to prove that we can run table tennis on a model that doesn't require public funding all the time, and therefore be at risk of the loss of public funding. If we can prove it here, then there will be a number of table tennis entrepreneurs that can build clubs all around England and all around the world. At the moment, we're trying to prove the concept, and we'll keep you posted as to how we're doing, because if we get to a tipping point, then other people will be able to start their own clubs, and table tennis can really grow out of all recognition.
Yeah, brilliant. Such an exciting time. I wish you the best of luck, Colin. I really hope this works out for you. And let us know how your players are getting on, because it seems like people are improving very quickly. So I'm sure we're going to see some juniors and seniors popping up on the circuit wearing the Corby Smash t-shirt.
There you go. Watch out for us as we start the new season.
Nice one. Cheers, Colin.
Thanks, Ben. Keep having fun.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. A big thank you to Colin Wilson for joining me on this episode. Really exciting what he's got going on at Corby Smash, and I'm hoping to be able to go up and check that out at some point. Just a few things I wanted to draw out from that. I really liked Colin's quote kind of about being a student, not an expert. And I think that's definitely applicable to all areas of life. If you're serious about improving and getting better, you need to have that kind of humble understanding where you see yourself very much as a student. And by most people's understanding, Colin is very much an expert. He's got so much experience, but I think the fact that he still views himself as a student of table tennis and a student of learning and expertise is the reason why he's doing so well. And it's once you start viewing yourself as an expert and someone who knows everything, that's when you're going to start dropping off and not improving and not learning. So that's really important. And I think if you're a table tennis player, regardless of your level, see yourself as a student, try and learn from those around you, whether they're players or coaches, and that's going to cause you to improve a lot faster than kind of thinking that you know everything and that, you're a little bit of an expert when it comes to table tennis. And, just have that kind of humble attitude. I think that's going to serve you well and just help you to continue improving. The other thing that I found interesting was that Colin kind of mentioned a few times throughout that interview kind of things about martial arts. And we didn't actually get into it in any specifics, but it's definitely something that I've seen popping up a few times. People comparing table tennis to martial arts and the idea of being efficient and smooth and relaxed and kind of creating power and strength without the kind of brute force of some other kind of activities. And that's definitely something that I'm going to looking into more in the future, kind of learning a little bit more about martial arts and how they can relate and overlap with table tennis. If you have any experience of martial arts, definitely get in touch, send me an email, ben@experttabletennis.com. I'd love to hear from you and chat about that further. So particularly if you're kind of a high level martial artist in some kind of martial arts and you're learning table tennis, I'd love to hear about the comparisons and your experiences. So do drop me an email. I will be back with episode 39 of the podcast. That will be coming out on the 1st of October. So stay tuned for that. You can head to experttabletennis.com/podcast to check out all of the old episodes. They're all up there. And if you're listening on iTunes, as always, please leave us a review and share the podcast with friends. If you're up for doing that, I'd really appreciate it. I'm Ben Larcombe from experttabletennis.com. Do head over to the website to check out everything else I'm up to. And I will see you in a month's time with the next episode. Thanks for listening.